All right, let's take a look at a few news articles. This I found very interesting, and I'm going to probably present it in my Wednesday class for extra credit. One of my companies I consult for wanted to look at the risks of Microsoft Copilot, and I've been through the OWASP risks of the top 10 risks of large language models and of machine learning models. But I found out that does not cover the risks of Microsoft Copilot very well, because there are other considerations beyond these generic considerations of these large language models. And in particular, the whole point of Microsoft Copilot is actually a pretty disturbing thing. So you go into Microsoft Copilot and you ask it a question like, it's time to write my progress report for this month. I want to list all the things I've done in the last month that have helped the company, or something like that. And it will now search through all your documents, all your emails, all the files you have in SharePoint, your Excel spreadsheets and everything, all the files you can reach, it will search through as source material. And of course, that's intended for it to be a useful search engine to round up all the data. The problem is some of that stuff is probably confidential. Some of those emails probably were like private communications not to be reported to other people. And some of the documents are probably limited in distribution only to certain people and not intended to be shared with other people. And of course, the AI doesn't know any of that. So it will create a document harvesting information from all these possibly confidential sources, and then it won't know what confidentiality label to apply to it. So it's quite likely that you will end up publishing documents that include information that came from a source that was not supposed to be shared with those people. So it's kind of breaking and blurring your security boundaries that are based on document labels. So it's an interesting issue. And I don't find that anywhere in the OWASP top 10 for large language models, because I think it's not really a property of the large language model itself as it is of the way it's being implemented. And this is a big common issue in security. There's theoretical flaws in the design of a product, and then there are extra flaws that occur when you actually implement it, from things like the hardware choices and how it interacts with other software. Didn't Microsoft roll it out to people's servers too, like without warning? Well, yeah, I think so. The kind we're talking about here, though, is the enterprise grade that you pay for. And so when you buy Microsoft 365, Office 365, where all your data is stored in the cloud, then I don't know if Copilot comes in without you asking for it. You might be right. Copilot might just be included with Microsoft Office without asking you. And so the question, is it secure and what do we need to do to make it secure, is in fact a very interesting question, far more than I thought it was. So I made a project where you go through the risks of Copilot, and I'll be using that in my consulting. Now, this is a pretty interesting idea. We've already seen the CISA suggest that they would like to outlaw paying ransomware payments in America. I don't think they've outlawed it at all yet, but they've been talking about how it would be better if they just outlawed paying ransomware payments. And now there's a bill that proposes that financial institutions will not be allowed to pay ransomware except up to a maximum of $100,000, which is not much, without getting special permission. And so again, in the same spirit, if it was illegal for everybody to pay the ransomware, that might be the only cure for this, because it's getting worse and worse. Does Microsoft Copilot also use Azure OpenAI LLM? Eric, it does, but what they say is even though it uses OpenAI, it uses the paid form of OpenAI, so none of the data you sent will be used to train it, and they claim none of the data you send to it will be shared with other people in any way. So that's, of course, obvious. I mean, the most obvious security thing, which I think you will find, even in the OWASP top 10, is that if I have company data, I want to make sure it stays inside my company and doesn't get shared with some kind of public service that's going to leak it out. And that's why everybody, Congress, U.S. government, and most large companies have said you can't use the free open source version of any of these, Google Bard, I guess now called Gemini or OpenAI or anything. Everybody says you can't use any of that because the data you send up there, you don't know that it's not going to leak out to a third party. But if you pay for the enterprise class, it costs some, then you're supposedly getting some more isolation there. Exactly how it works, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's an important issue too. So OpenTable is the second case I've heard recently where they had a review site and then they decided to attach real names to all the reviews, real names and photographs and maybe some other information like your phone number, and then they wanted to automatically apply that to all your old reviews from years ago. And of course, everybody freaked out. The whole point of leaving reviews is you need it to be confidential. And I'm, of course, interested in this because of rating a teacher. Yeah, so they yeah, I think it was phone number they wanted to add. And anyway, the point is, what I wondered is why. Another company said they were going to do this, and everybody's freaking out. It was Glassdoor, I think, where you rate your business. And that they say is they have to do this because they're getting flooded with AI-generated spam. So people are using large language models to create floods of realistic reviews to sway the ratings. And therefore, they want to implement like a real name policy where you have to prove you're a real human to leave a review. Now, this one, after the protest, they said they aren't going to apply it to old ratings. They'll only apply it to new ratings. So people who are not comfortable attaching their real name to the ratings can just stop using the service. And that seems more reasonable. But it does raise the reason why, which I didn't understand, which is, of course, all these things are getting flooded by spam. And they said they've always had a huge problem with people putting up fake reviews. There are people that hire other people to put up fake good reviews for their restaurant and fake bad reviews for their competition. And it's hard to clean that out. So that's the fundamental problem with these online rating systems. Anyway, all right. This is very interesting. This guy, Evan Bose, decided, now I've heard for years that Donald Trump's Truth Social is just Mastodon. Now it looks different than Mastodon, but they say it's just Mastodon behind the scenes. Yeah. And what this guy did was he wanted to go through a Mastodon and see if he could find some proof. Go through Truth Social and see if he could find some proof that it was Mastodon. So what he did was he found the login page has this API, and he actually found an error page on Truth Social that has the Mastodon elephant, picture here. Obviously, just the Mastodon code. So this is a pretty clear smoking gun, proving that you guys are actually using open source Mastodon. And the problem is, even though open source code is free, it does have a license, and the license says if you derive a product based on this, you must distribute the source code of your derivative product along with the product. And so he made a request to see the source code, and then made plans gave him like a week to reply and said, boy, I figured out all this trouble I'm going to give him for violating the license. But they gave him the source code, and he's published it openly. So he's shown that Donald Trump's Truth Social is in fact a combination of 3 open source projects, all of which are limited in what you can do with them, and it may very well be violating the license. But anyway, Mastodon is the main part, the engine that handles the posts. And there's a couple other things. A Soapbox is the front end, another piece of software, open source, and there's some third open source file also being used. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, you can now get the entire source code of Truth Social. It's available here, and he's keeping it up to date. So that is interesting. And actually, perhaps if they provide that source code, maybe they're not out of compliance with the licensing model anymore. It is legal to take open source products and make commercial products based on them, I think, as long as you distribute the source code with it. Anyway, in a way, it hardly matters. Truth Social is in huge trouble. They have 3 lawsuits, either 2 or 3 lawsuits among the various founders suing each other, claiming they didn't do their job and they don't deserve their shares. Their shares are falling rapidly. They have a big dump of new shares that's watering it down and making it share the price fall even faster. The whole thing is just not a real business. It's just sort of a covert way to donate money to Donald Trump. It doesn't really make any sense as a business or make any money or have any sensible valuation. Let's see. So this is pretty interesting. Especially in this malware analysis course, CISA has opened a public tool to do malware analysis, like Google has their VirusTotal. And apparently everyone can use it, so I haven't tried using it yet, but I guess I should. I wonder why the government wants to do this. Seems like it's just going to expose them to a flood of requests. and I don't know what they're going to do at the other end except run it through one of the online sandboxes like Joe Sandbox or something. But anyway, they're going to do it. So they've made it available to government and military organizations since November 2023. And their 400 users have submitted only 1,600 files, which is probably why they think they can afford this. Sort of like I opened my classes to the whole world, and when I first started this, I thought I might be flooded by hundreds of students, but that didn't happen. It turned out there really aren't that many people that want to take my class, so I can just let everybody in and it doesn't matter. And this makes it sound like so far people don't really submit that many files, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, it's an interesting alternative. So let me stop the news.